Pakistan told to turn up Taliban fight. The Barack Obama administration is turning up the pressure on Pakistan to fight the Taliban inside its borders, warning that if it does not act more aggressively, the United States will use considerably more force on the Pakistani side of the border to shut down Taliban attacks on American forces in Afghanistan, American and Pakistani officials have said. The blunt message was delivered in a tense encounter in Pakistan last month, before President Obama announced his new war strategy, when General James L. Jones, Mr. Obama's National Security Advisor, and John O. Brennan, the White House counterterrorism chief, met with the heads of Pakistani's military and its intelligence service. United States officials said the message did not amount to an ultimatum, not yet at least, but rather it was intended to prod a reluctant Pakistani military to go after Taliban insurgents in Pakistan who are directing attacks in Afghanistan. For their part, the Pakistanis interpreted the message as a fairly blunt warning that unless Pakistan moved quickly to act against two Taliban groups they have so far refused to attack, the United States was prepared to take unilateral action to greatly expand predator drone attacks beyond the tribal areas, and if needed, to resume raids by special operations forces into the country against Al-Qaeda and Taliban leaders. A senior administration official, asked about the encounter, declined to go into details, but added quickly, "I think they read our intentions accurately." A Pakistani official who has been briefed on the meeting said, Jones's message was if that Pakistani help wasn't forthcoming, the United States would do it themselves. American commanders said earlier this year that they were considering expanding drone strikes in Pakistan's lawless tribal areas. But General Jones' comments marked the first time that the United States bluntly told Pakistan it would have to choose between leading attacks against the insurgents inside the country's borders or stepping aside to let the Americans do it. In other words, to expand the occupation or invasion. The recent security demands followed an offer of a broader strategic relationship and expanded intelligence sharing and non-military economic aid from the United States. Pakistan's politically weakened president, Zardari, replied in writing to a 2-page letter that General Jones delivered from Mr. Obama. But Mr. Zardari gave no indication of how Pakistan would respond to the incentives, which were linked to the demands for greatly stepped-up counter-terrorism actions. "We've offered them a strategic choice," one administration official said, describing the private communications, "and we've heard back almost nothing." Another administration official said, "Our patience is wearing thin." So again, in other words, unless the problem is taken on in Pakistan also, Afghanistan, it won't get any better. American Special Operations Forces are considering launching more covert American ground raids, and it would mark a substantial escalation of the administration's counter-terrorism campaign. American Special Operations Forces attacked Al-Qaeda militants in a Pakistani village near the border of Afghanistan in early September 2008, in the first publicly acknowledged case of United States forces conducting a ground raid on Pakistani soil. But the raid caused a political uproar in Pakistan. with the country's top generals condemning the attack, and the United States backed off what had been a planned series of such strikes. During his intensive review of Pakistan and Afghanistan strategy, officials say, President Obama concluded that no amount of additional troops in Afghanistan would succeed in their new mission if the Taliban could retreat over the Pakistani border to regroup and resupply. But the administration has said little publicly about the Pakistani part of the strategy. We concluded early on that whatever you do with Pakistan, you don't want to talk about it much, a senior presidential aide said last week. All it does is get backs up and in Islamabad. During his speech at West Point last week, Mr. Obama said that our success in Afghanistan is linked to our partnership with Pakistan. But for the rest of the speech, he referred to the country in the past tense, talking about how there have been those in Pakistan who've argued that the struggle against extremism is not their fight, and that Pakistan is better off doing little or seeking accommodation with those who use violence. He never quite said how his administration views the Pakistanis today. Even before Mr. Obama announced his decision last week, the White House had approved an expansion of the CIA's drone program in Pakistan's lawless tribal areas. Pakistani officials, wary of civilian casualties and the appearance of further infringement of national sovereignty, are still in discussions with American officials over whether to allow the CIA to expand its missile strikes into other territories in the nation of Pakistan, a politically delicate move because it is outside the tribal areas. American commanders say this is a necessary step to expand the war into Pakistan's tribal areas and many other areas. Pakistani officials also voiced concern that the Pakistani army were to aggressively attack the two groups that most concern the United States. The militants would respond with more waves of bombings, further undermining the weak civilian government. And if the Pakistan government or civilian government falls, who or what? Who would take control of the nation's nuclear weapons? And that in itself is a very good question. These are more signs of the end times. Transition days. Huge changes are coming. The transition is ongoing, happening day by day all around the world.